welcome. We've got another guest today on Speakers on Edge. Here he is, Paul. It's lovely to have you on the show today, Paul.
Thank
Tell
you
us
for having
about
me.
you.
Well, some 35 years ago, I began my current journey with a fresh degree in counseling from the University of Virginia in counseling and education. But 1989, some 35 years ago. And I looked for who I could serve because I've always wanted to make a difference since as far back as I can remember. And first I worked for the at-risk youth in the Waynesboro, Virginia school system. And I learned a bunch of really important things. One is that at-risk youth are at risk for a real good reason. And my task was to usher them into success as students. And it was difficult. For example, there was a DuPont factory in Waynesboro, Virginia, or at least there was when I was there. And this one young student, his parents were in different shifts. He was his father was all night. Their mother was all day. So when he comes home from school, he has to take care and feed his younger siblings. Now imagine trying to succeed in school with that going on. So I learned that vividly, that they didn't have much access to success or not being at-risk youth. When that job, and as in the process of that job, I was very aware of the influence of domestic violence and abuse. A lot of these families of these at-risk youth had domestic violence and abuse. And in those years, and probably many other places in the world, the victim was obliged to press charges because unless they pressed charges, nothing happened. And of course, that put them in a very strange, stressful position because the perpetrator don't press charges. And they were afraid to press charges for losing the support of the abuser, money and support. And so they were highly stressed because in that year, back in the early 1990s, they were obliged to press charges, otherwise nothing changed. So then the question arose to me, well, how can I make a difference? I always ask myself that question, how can I make a difference? And I started canvassing the legal system, because at that point, if the judge wouldn't assign the perpetrator to a DV class, it didn't happen. And out of that inquiry, I started 2 domestic violence classes. I created a whole organization called Domestic Violence Intervention Program of Central Virginia. And I was waiting for the judges to send people my way, which sometimes they did, but it was very frustrating. And after 2 years, I said, how about I prevent it? How about I prevent domestic violence before the damage is done? Wouldn't that be a good idea? And I started my path towards providing the services to the abusers so they would be less abusive. And along the way, I had a moment of epiphany. One of the perpetrators was a very successful construction person. He had tons of equipment, and he was working 100 hours a week. His spouse would rather him be home, but he felt obligated to operate successfully this construction business at 100 hours a week. And I learned something interesting. When I suggested that the 2 of them go to church on Sunday, things started to change. He was no longer working 100 hours a week. Maybe he was only working 80 hours a week. Who knows? But once I added the element of spirituality, of a connection over church on a Sunday, things started to move. And I took away a lesson from that. I took away, how about I explore my own spiritual resources? And when I ceased offering the domestic violence perpetrator classes, I began to follow a path towards being a chaplain. Starting off at the University of Virginia Hospital in Charlottesville, Virginia. And eventually I accumulated 4 units of CPE, Clinical Pastoral Education, doing a lot of self-examination and learning along the way. To the fact that I then started serving communities. I was hired to be a chaplain in the largest psychiatric hospital of New Jersey. I would serve the people in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I'd visit the retirement communities and nursing homes. I'd do home visits. And for a number of years, I became a chaplain. And that was very satisfying. Fast forward, we moved from living in the Seattle area to living in the area of Tucson, Arizona, where I dwell right now. And I learned to be a hospice chaplain. It's amazingly satisfying to bring that kind of pastoral care to people at the end of their lives, or the family of those who are at the end of their lives. And for a number of years, I was a hospice chaplain, and I would fill in here and there, and I'd be a community chaplain for the local federation. And then there was COVID. We all remember COVID. And the hospitals, retirement communities, all shut their doors to pastoral care. Some people tried to do pastoral care by Zoom. Not very successful. And to add insult to injury, the corporate world discovered that they could buy up hospices all over the country and charge the U.S. government, because Social Security is a benefit for hospice. And these corporations learned that they could get paid to operate hospices. And it became very uncomfortable for me. And since between that and COVID, I began to focus on marriage and communication coaching, having developed a set of skills to help provide people what if present would make a difference. And that got me, for the last 12 years, I've seen about 2,000 couples. But my idealism started way, way before that. I worked at food co-ops in northern Pennsylvania. I would deliver food to local food cooperatives. I thought that would make a good deal. And then I began to support cooperatives, and I looked for my next challenges. And I always look for what if present would make a difference. And against this, as a young 20-year-old, still looking for what would make a difference, I decided to move to Israel to rebuild the Jewish people. That was the idea of the time, assuming that if we moved the Jews back to Israel, things would go better. In that world, I was drafted into the Israeli army in 1974. And, a little bit ironic, I learned to operate an M16 rifle in the Hebrew language. A little bit ironic that way. And I got married, my son was born, and eventually moved back to the US. And I still wanted to live in a community. I thought community was one of the links to transforming the world. And among other things, I lived in a commune in the Charlottesville, Virginia area called Twin Oaks. For 5 years, I lived there. My marriage ended. Because I think if only people lived in a society where money was not an issue, people would be better. And bottom line is, not really. So I wish I could say that shifting the structure would make people into better people with less motivation to do nonsense. Didn't really happen either. And eventually I moved to, I'm going to skip fast forward. We moved to the area of Tucson, Arizona, and I started marriage and communication coaching. And after about 2,000 couples, I really I know I can do it. I have a track record that anyone can investigate. And out of my experience of the 2,000 couples, more at this time, I created a book called Marriage and Communication Recipes for Life. This is a book that is designed as a manual. It has specific directions on how to create a powerful relationship. And I'll share some of those things I've learned later. But basically, I've understood that most people just want how. They don't really invite explanations. Just tell me what to do. 3 out of 4 people, it's been said, they just want directions. And so this book, Marriage and Communication Recipes for Life, is a manual. No chapters to read, nothing to understand. You just follow the directions, get your cake, and your cake is your life. End of commercial. And I've always been an idealist. I can be 13 years old and I was an idealist. I always looking for answers. that would make the difference. One of the things I bring on to my couples is taking the test at 16personalities.com. Take this as a suggestion. At 16personalities.com, this is a version of what is known as the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. You will get a sense of how you and your partner interact with the world. Some people are extroverts. They get lots of energy from being with people. They like to spend time with people. They come home with more energy than when they came home, when they left. I'm not that. I'm an introvert. I live most of my life inside my house. I am self-creating. And in this test, you'll find out a percentage. Someone came here who was an introvert, who was an extrovert of 99% extroverted. It's not surprising that he sings in a rock band. And someone else came here and was a 99% introvert. I'm not quite that far, but she, in this case, she had her cat, music, books, internet, cable, and she had Zoom, and she had her garden. And she could happily entertain and work all day long without having set her foot outside the door. I'm maybe not quite that far, but I'm close. You might be an extrovert. You might be an introvert. But then this gets to the next piece. Is some people just want directions. They're sensors, which is the letter S. They follow policies and procedures and rules and regulations, manuals. They just want to know how. They don't really care why. There's an old joke that illustrates this. Mother and daughter are creating a brisket for dinner. And the daughter notices her mother cutting off the ends of the piece of brisket. And the daughter said, "Mom, why do you cut off the end of the brisket?" And she said, "Well, that's my way my mother used to do it. I just do what she did." So they went to Grandma and said, "Grandma, why do you cut off the ends of the brisket?" And Grandma says, "Well, the pot was too small." So you can understand that the daughter was intuitive. She wanted to know why. The mother just wanted the instructions on how to prepare a brisket, and she followed the direction she learned from her mother. So this is an illustration of how an N might be related to a sensor. And then, to follow this model, when you go to 16personalities.com, you will learn whether you're a feeler or a thinker. If those are familiar with the Big Bang Theory on TV, know that there's a character named Sheldon. Sheldon lives his life cognitively, intellectually, and logically. He seeks understanding and solutions and creates up with plans and fulfills them. You might notice that his own feelings are not a priority. So you might say, you ignore my feelings. You don't ignore your feelings. He doesn't really pay attention to his own. And in real life, there was a couple where there was a thinker married to a feeler, like I am married to a feeler. And the moment arose was, "Why are you feeling that way? It makes no sense. I didn't mean it that way. Why are you so unhappy?" It's a yes or no question. Why are we spending so much time on this? And it turns out that she was left feeling, "You don't care about me or my feelings." And that relationship started to sink pretty fast. Thinkers and feelers. I'm married to a feeler, and so I honor her feelings. Whatever she says, I listen. I don't offer suggestions. I don't offer advice. I just listen, and we are happy. The last of the 4 letters you'll see is your judger or perceiver. There's a lot of mischief in the couples I've seen. Judgers are by nature planful, organized. They do not do well with uncertainty. If I say to my spouse, "I'll handle it soon," that just means that she has to do it for herself to make sure it happens. They like to get things out of the way fast as possible. And they're not happy with people are uncertain or, declarative. This creates a lot of problem in the couples I've seen. He says, I'll handle it. She means I have to do it myself. And the people who are J are the more planful, and the people who are P are more perceiver, which is called perceiver. I'm one of those people. For me, it's out of sight, out of mind. If it's not in front of me, my mind is somewhere else. And the huge breakdowns happen when a judger is married to a perceiver, which my spouse is, and a perceiver can hang on to a thought for maybe up to a week before it fades, which leaves the partner feeling I can't rely on you. So there are best practices that we add to our work with my couples at Marriage and Communication to create best practices that allow the perceiver person, that's me, look at the calendar and say, oh, this is the day we're going to do that. And then life unfolds. I could talk more about this, but when you understand how your partner engages with the world, you don't take things personally. You understand that that's how their mind works. 16personalities.com, personality types. Amazing breakdowns when you don't know who you're married to and how their mind works. And while I'm at it, the other assignment is to go to The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. He distinguishes that people feel loved in slightly different ways. And when you don't know how to love your partner in their love language, a lot of tragedy can ensue. Gifts, quality time, acts of service, words of affirmation, and physical touch. And we all have 5 love languages, but the order of significance can vary widely from one to the other. I have learned personally, being married to my spouse, that she is very, very much into acts of service. That's how she lives love, expresses love, and receives love. It could be as simple as, let's change the sheets on a Sunday morning. And while I might not want to change our sheets as frequently as she does, when I was much younger, I'd go, one more week, but that doesn't work for my spouse. So when she says it's time to change the sheets, I say, yes, I'll be right there. I get to show love to her. She gets to feel love from me, and we grow in our relationship. It can be as simple as that. Learn who you're married to. Speak their love language. And life occurs. You don't have to have the same personality. Maybe even a good idea. But when you know who you're married to and speak their love language, we benefit. It could be as simple as how I drive our car. I can get within 2 car lengths in front of me, and I'll be there safely. When my spouse is in the car and I do that, she gets very upset. She does not feel safe. And being a feeler, I could explain to her logically that all those traffic is far enough away that we can definitely make that turn. Makes never no difference. She's a feeler. She responds to life emotionally first. So what do I do? For the sake of us, I go, do I drive my way? Do I drive our way? I chose to drive our way. I brake sooner, wait longer to make a turn out of the supermarket parking lot, and we tend to make turns, more right turns than lefts. Why is that? Because she feels vulnerable. She's in the passenger seat, and she looks over at the car. The car's coming, and she feels very vulnerable. So more left turns, more right turns than lefts will get us there happier together. They train United Parcel Service drivers to do that. They're driving these big step vans. And they've learned that if you make all right turns, not only will it be safer, you'll be there faster. Amazon drivers have an app for that. They plug their route into their cell phones, and they tell you, if you go this way, you'll be safer and you'll be done sooner. So I learned to drive for we instead of driving for me. She picks a restaurant I like. I choose a restaurant she likes. And it's not about the food. It's about the quality time, my love language, we'll spend together. And as a couple, I'll say, let's go to this really beautiful county park. And she responds, yes. And give me half an hour to throw in some laundry and I'll be ready to go. Being aware of each other's love language is key to a lot of success. And when people come to me with infidelity and cheating, very frequently we find out that he was busy making his world business work. She was waiting to have quality time with him. And he wasn't providing the quality time that she needed to feel loved. And so she found someone else to play with, which he noticed and comes to me and says, there's something wrong with my wife. So it's essential that we learn to love each other's love language, and be aware how each other's tend to respond to our world. That's about love languages and personality types. I could say more, and I really invite you to come contact me. And anywhere in the world, we will create an extraordinary marriage in 5 sessions. My guarantee. Then there's the issue of infidelity. Turns out that infidelity is a symptom, not a cause. Once we recognize that infidelity is a symptom, then we can ask, a symptom of what? And that is where we go to work at Marriage and Communication Coaching. Let's disappear the iceberg, and what's left is a marriage. Not being aware of each other's love languages and personality types is definitely a big piece of that. Another element we'll look at are distortions left over from the past. Sometimes coping strategies we developed at age 5 that are still running unawarely beneath the surface of your life. My story is that when I'm 5.5 years old, we moved from one end of New York City to the other end of New York City. So here I am, November 1955. You can do the math. I'm in a new area, new apartment, new school. I don't know anybody, and I'm 5.5 years old. My mother walks me to this school, and then she leaves me at that school. And in that moment, now I'm 5 years old at this point, I know beyond the shadow of a doubt that no one cares what I want. No one. And that proceeded to influence my life for much of the next 50 years. I just wouldn't ask because no one cares. I wouldn't make requests. Why bother? No one cares. And we all have this. In a couple I saw once, her father never said that he loved her, ever. And growing up in that household, she never felt appreciated and acknowledged, ever. So by the time she grew up, she had a PhD in I don't matter. She wakes up waiting in the world of I don't matter. There's a phrase called confirmation bias, which means if you look for it, you'll find it, whether or not it's there. 5 minutes late, not good enough. Feedback from her boss, definitely not good enough. Gets an argument with her spouse, for sure, not good enough. All day long, listening for, not good enough. And then she goes to sleep and wakes up the next day with that same radio station playing in the background of her life. Now, who does she marry? Turns out that he grew up in a family where he was obliged to be aware of the emotional needs of the people around him, because that's what worked. So that's who he is. And these two people married each other at their wedding. Not good enough, said I do I have to be aware of the people around me. And until we distinguish that and overwrite it, which is part of our work, they're still living a life developed as a 5-year-old or 12-year-old or a previous unsuccessful marriage. Coping strategies from the first marriage which failed, which are still present in the new marriage, almost ensuring that it will fail too. So that's only part of the work. We look at things, leftovers, distortions left over from an earlier time of our life that made sense at the time, maybe, but no longer make sense in your brand new adult relationship. Distortions. And while I'm at it, the other part of our program, shall we say, is communication skills. To my dissatisfaction and discouragement, our schools, at least in this country, provide no communication for communication skills or relationships. They don't. They teach you how to know, to retain, to take tests, to get grades, but nowhere over the whole length of high school, 12 grades, do they actually teach you how to maintain a high quality relationship or to communicate clearly. And then they go to work in our society, not knowing how to communicate with or get along with people around them. It's one of my pet peeves that we do not have this. Another one of the reasons I wrote my book, Marriage and Communication Recipes for Life, because these recipes can easily be converted into curriculum. Because unfortunately, my second big peeve is our teenagers are often feel forced to, obliged to say yes when they want to say no, which puts them in danger. They want to be accepted. They want to belong. They want to be popular. They want to be in love, because that's what teenagers do. And their bodies, their hormones, are militating to do something else with their bodies, which we can't ignore. And then their friend comes up with an idea. I have this great idea. We'll go out and we'll stay out till 2 o'clock in the morning. We'll hang out with our friends in the parking lot. We'll have a great time. And the teenager who aspires to a relationship with this person, maybe in love with this person, feels obligated to say yes when they really mean to say no. This has long-term damage to their future. 5 years later, 10 years later, they're out in the world. And someone with a hot car and a hot body shows up, and they exchange another piece of themselves for the sake of the hot guy with the hot body and a hot car. Basically, when you say yes, when you say yes, when you really mean to say no, it causes long-term damage. You'll exchange a piece of yourself for a contract, to be accepted, to lie for a job, to accept somebody in your life that does not belong there. So part of my intent with this book and the work I do is to translate recipes into curriculum. The first part being the best way to keep yourself safe is to start your sentences with the word yes. Y-E-S. This is the first of the tools you'll get on your very first session. Why is this? When you start yes, you've gone from reacting to responding. Always a good idea. Reacting is not intelligent. Responding is. Reacting is great when the light turns red. We want you to stop. We don't want you to stop and think about it. Stop. And in human relationships, we're obliged to pause, reflect, and choose. And it starts with the word yes. Many gifts of the word yes. One, we're using our intelligence. We're responding, we're not reacting. Two, we're listening. And they know we're listening. And that we've heard what they've said. We've established a clear connection. Yes. And then with that and those 4 pieces in hand, or in mouth, we can then say, and let's sit down and discuss this. And when's a good time for us to talk? And I'll make us a cup of coffee and I'll listen to everything you have to say. So YES, 3-letter word, opens up lines of communication unambiguously, clearly. Yes. This also works in the world of work. Supposing you're a real estate agent and they want a $100,000 house in $1 million neighborhood. And you could argue with them, not a good idea. Or you could say, yes, let's look at every option. You'll pick the one that's good for you. Yes. This is business practice. And if you're a parent of teenagers, you don't react to our children. Your teenager says, I want this amazingly expensive thing. It's important to me. You should buy it. And the parent says, yes, I'm listening. And then you proceed to get all the information you need to make a proper response as a parent. You may find out that the amazingly expensive thing is not about the thing, but about the quality of their feelings and their relationships. And if you react to them and shut them down, they will not feel heard, they will not feel respected, they certainly will not be listened to. And your job as a parent of a teen, will be that much difficult. So we get to go yes and to our children. We get to go yes and to our customers. We get to yes and to our spouses and our marriages. Because when we say yes and tell me more, our spouses will feel heard and listened to, instead of giving advice they didn't ask for, which leaves them unheard and feeling disregarded and disrespected. Yes and. If we take a step back, we will understand that at work we are paid to collaborate, cooperate, solve problems, and achieve goals. That's why they pay us. Someone approaches me at work, I will stop, and together we'll solve problems, collaborate, solve, and achieve goals. Perfectly legitimate when you're world at work. And what you get to learn is when you leave work, you leave that communication protocol at work. Basically, your best answer is yes, and tell me more. We turn off the Mr. Fix-It app that many of us default to attempt to solve their problems uninvited. That's important. Uninvited. What our couples learn is that unless she or he says, "What would you do?" we do not offer any advice nor suggestions. To do so leaves them feeling unheard and disrespected. Still, yes. The last thing about yes, or at least the next thing about yes is a great first aid, not a cure, for anger. I've heard people say, well, I have anger problems. My spouse has anger issue problems. He's gone to anger classes and it didn't make any difference. He's angry. Or perhaps she's angry. Well, someone says, JC, you're a total fill in the blank. And we might be tempted to explain or defend, which is a useless idea because they're not listening. So why? So what do? They say, JC, you're the worst person on the planet. And you go, yes, I hear you. Don't forget that piece. Yes, I hear you. I've never thought of it that way. Can we sit down with a cup of coffee and I'll listen to everything you have to say? That'll be surprising because they're expecting to get an argument. But our explanations, at best, worst, would feed the fire, not extinguish it. So if someone's irritated you, including your child, your teenager, someone at work, they express frustration, irritation, and anger, even outrage. And the way you handle it is just say, yes, this is important. I hear you. Let's pick a good time to talk about this. And I'll listen to everything you have to say. And after about 2 or 3 yeses, you may have a shot at having a conversation that makes a difference. You might have a shot at communication. I will add this caveat. If they're intent on being angry and staying angry, they may be following you around the room to make sure that you hear them. If you don't feel safe, stop, get out, because there's too much heat for you actually to make a difference. But by and large, in everyday anger, you can say, yes, this is important. I hear you. Let's sit down and talk. So, caveat, if you do not feel safe, do not continue. If this is a tool, this is a first aid for ordinary run-of-the-mill anger. Yes, I hear you. Let's sit down. I want to hear everything you have to say. By and large, it will work for most run-of-the-mill anger folks, but sometimes it does not. Be safe. Do not continue. Leave. Leave the room. Leave the house. Get out. Be safe. So with the YES, the very first recipe in the book, by the way, you don't have to be in a dispute longer than it takes to say yes, and let's talk about that. You could be a manager at work, staff manager, and you're a meeting of managers. And you could get caught up in good, bad, right, wrong, agree or disagree, or ego conversations, or Someone just to say, yes, let's take a 5-minute break, come back and start over. Yes, tell me more. Yes, let's look at the opportunities for our enterprise. Yes. And if you're an employee and the manager comes down with a new policy and you don't really understand this new policy, you could just shut up and hope someone will explain it to you later. Or you could say, yes, I hear what you're saying, and I'm not quite clear about the third thing you said. Could you say more about that? Which leaves them feeling you're listening, always a good idea, and you get the information you need to participate in your team, at your place of work. So the same skill, yes, and maintains integrity at the level of organizations as well. So whether you're in school, at home, with your spouse, with your children, anywhere at all, just say yes to start off with. How about breakfast? Yes, and how about scrambled eggs? Yes, and where would you like to go for dinner? Yes, and how about we go to the Mexican restaurant down the street? Yes, and what are you interested in eating? I'd be interested in a shrimp quesadilla. Yes, so would I. So let's go to this Mexican restaurant down the street and we'll both have dinner together. And it's fueled by yes. Number one skill. I'll give you about 2, 3 more. There's a lot of them, but the word and, I've fallen in love with the word and can connect dogs and cats, peanut butter and jelly, brothers and sisters. So and does connect objects and can connect questions, thoughts. I suggest we use the color gold, and blue would work just as well. I want to go to the beach and I don't have the time. So and will connect conversations. And then I stumbled about a month ago and opens up the future in a way that a no will not. A no tends to stop the action. No. But a no without an and leaves us stuck, alienated, disappointed, frustrated in an argument. Well, we don't need to do that so long as we have A and D. Even though they may say no, you go, and we're connected to the next conversation. And is a great first aid for depression and unhappiness. I'm feeling kind of down today. Your partner says, and you can say it to yourself. I'm having a hard day. And you can sit there and suffer, or you could and yourself. And how shall we handle that? And what's next? Anything after the and is a brand new future. And you can and yourself out of disappointment with a couple of 3-letter ands. And back to the couple. He says, how about we go to this county park? It's a true story, by the way. She goes, no. And he goes, and with a rising inflection, don't forget that. She goes, I could go, but give me half an hour to fix my hair. Then I'm ready. Fine. Where he says, how about we go to the county park together? And she goes, yes. And give me about half an hour to finish my hair, and I'm ready. With an and, they get to the park. Without it, they don't. This is actually a true story. And, I'm unhappy today. And how do you need something from me? Or I'm getting a little confused here. Your partner says, and is there something you need from me? Can I help? You just and yourselves into a future that is connected. So the first 3 tools are yes, ands. Oh, 13th tool. I'll get there now. Seems. It seems to me, there's that word, that we tend to react to one another. I say something to JC, he reacts. He says something to me, I react. Reacting is not intelligent. And as I said earlier, we want to be in a realm of relationships. So I may say something to my spouse, and if she doesn't agree or But I'm saying, her mind goes, is it good? Is it bad? Is it right? Is it wrong? Do I agree or disagree? Automatically. When we hear something from each other, we'll automatically go to good, bad, right, wrong, or disagree, or agree. And if we don't agree, communication stops, listening stops, and we start arguing about whose truth is truer, whose reality is most real, and who's right and who's wrong. Again, no communication. And for that, we need the word seems. Seems indicates that it's an interpretation, not the truth. So we really have not much to argue about, and we could discuss interpretations. Seems will get you a discussion where a truth will get you an argument. So we have yes, ands, and seems as the first three tools in my book, Love Languages. And we put them all together, we have a shot at communication. Just be aware that people listen to you for the truth of your words, to validate what they hear you saying. And underneath it all, good, bad, right, wrong, agree or disagree, whose truth is real, most true, whose reality is most real, and who's right and who's wrong. And that we need the word seems. So we put the first three pieces together. We have yes and, seems to me, gets us in the direction of communication. There's a longer piece, but not for our time. The other ingredient I'll add before I stop, two ingredients. We are aware that we speak declaratively. We just established that. And we tend to use words like always and every and never and I always, you always, teenagers always, we always. Tend to is the answer. We can, instead of always, ever, never, and only, we say, I tend to. We tend to. That disables the fix-it app and allows for high quality listening. Seems to me, yes, and it seems to me that we tend to. We'll put you in a condition of communication where being an always, ever, never, and only, it does not. Seems, yes, and tends to. The last piece I want to cram into today, well, there's always more, is the power of language. Martin Heidegger tells us, German philosopher of the last century, language is the house of being. He's famous for that one quote. Language is the house of being. The words we use shape our experience of our lives. The words we use shape our experience of being alive. And with yes, ands, and seems, we get one life. You get no buts and arguments, you get another. And I imagine two houses of being. In one house, they say, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm very sorry. And the other house is, I apologize. I'm sorry is about you. I apologize is about us. Now, you could also live in the house of I'm ashamed. Blame me, it's my fault. Or you could live in a house where I'm accountable. I'm responsible. I plan. You can feel the difference. And unfortunately, too many of our parents have let us get away with try. I'll try, Mom, or to the teacher, I'll try and do my best. Try has very weak relationship with the results. It doesn't open you to a new future. You tried, failed. If you choose to intend, good, bad, or indifferent, those results belong to you, and you have a path forward to take a new approach, to come up with a new plan. So we have these two houses of being. You can live in a house where it's my fault, blame me, I'm guilty of that. I'll try better next time, I hope, and I wish. Or you could live in a house of I apologize, I'm responsible, I'm accountable, I intend, and I plan and I anticipate. Pretty very vivid difference of these two houses of being. And last one for today. I love doing this stuff, in case you hadn't noticed, because this opens up oodles of life. If you listen closely, you'll hear, I have to, I need to, I should, I ought to, and I must. Doesn't matter which particular political persuasion. Democrats have to. Republicans need to. The president should. As a nation, we must. These words are commonly sprinkled throughout our days and lives, and our nations and our families. We say it to ourselves. I have to go to work. I need to go shopping. And if we listen closely, you'll find out, or else. Or else. And if you're doing it because, or else, you are not free. Your life is given by obligations and circumstances. Obligations and circumstances, and you are not free because everything you do is because, or else. The easy way out, and I'll stop after this. Let JC have some questions. Change an O for just a letter E. That's it. And that moment you go from a got to life to a get to life. Oh, in a get to life, you do have choice. You do have freedom. You do have access to possibility and opportunity. None of these live in a world given by I have to, I should, I ought to, and I must. You're free. You can change your mind for no consequences because you just change your mind. So I invite us to change our O's for an E and have a get to life where your life is you get to. And I point out get to parents raise get to children who one day will be get to adults. And that's the long game. That's how you know you've won. When your children have the language, the house of being, that allows them to express their lives as adults one day. And maybe I'll stop here. I have lots of things to say, and I look forward to meeting with anybody. By Zoom works just fine. If you come here in Tucson, Arizona, we'll do it face to face. And this is a life that works. People pay attention to return on investment, ROI, which is okay. But I invite us to consider, what if we structured our lives, our behaviors, our workplaces, our families with ROR, return on life, ROL? What if we manage our lives and looking for what is our return on life? I suspect we'd have a very different life together, a different society, where we look at what's your return on life? And now I'll stop. JC.
Well, I've just written 7 pages of notes. That's why I've been so quiet, because I've been riveted by what you've been saying. I didn't want to interrupt your flow because I have to say, wow. Okay. Let me go back to my notes.
Start with yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And.
Perfect.
Yes, and. I'm going to jump ahead because while you were saying yes, first thing that came to my mind was the movie by Jim Carrey, Yes Man.
Uh-huh.
And how he would say yes to everything.
Mm-hmm.
But.
And, no buts, and.
Well, and it got him into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Because he didn't put a yes and in place.
He was just a plain old yes.
He was just a plain old yes.
No future without the and.
And I found it. I had a question about you saying yes, saying that was the first place to start, when the moment before you were talking about how teenagers say yes to fit in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they feel obligated to say yes, and they know in their hearts they ought not to. I was a substitute teacher in Central Virginia High School, and I tried to express to the young women, you don't have to accept abuse from your boyfriend. And they look at me back and say, well, Mr. Z, they called me Mr. Z, if I don't accept abuse, I don't have a boyfriend. Right? And that moment is forever sticks in my mind that there's something going on here that we get to be responsible for. And many, many years later, here I am. Yes, and seems to me we tend to. And that's the very first recipes. Because if you're not listening, it's kind of a waste of time. If they're angry and they're not listening, it's a waste of time. So, yes, Anne, it seems to me we tend to. We'll set you towards communication and self respect. You don't have to surrender your reality to anybody longer than it takes to say yes. With your
And what
yes, you are in control of your next moment.
hmm.
Yes. Yes,
and
JC.
what ad- and what advice would you give those teenagers who they feel compelled to say yes? They then want to follow your advice and put "and" on as the next step. What would you recommend, or what would your advice be for them to continue that sentence?
Well, optimally, they've had a class in high school about yes, ands, and seems. It's the name of the curriculum I propose for high schools. I'm sure you can go earlier than that, but in high school, they're really interested on relationships and hormones. Um, so ideally, they've learned in one semester that when you communicate, start your sentences with yes. And if teenagers are listening now, just you get when you start a sentence with yes, you honor the relationship. They know you're listening to them. They know you've heard them. And we have established a relationship, just the first three letters. And then I like the idea, but I'm not sure I want to do that. And
So
yes, and opens up future. That's a mutual honor and respect.
I want to go and say no to the
Then you say,
situation.
well, then you
And
next one.
you said how no closes and it stops the action.
Yeah. And then
So
start off with adding and even to a no. Perhaps, your child comes up to you while you're middle of making dinner. Mommy, mommy, mommy. Or I have this great idea. I just have this great idea. I want your permission for something. But you're in the middle of making dinner. And you could say, no, not now. Talk to your father after dinner. We hear a lot of that. Or you could say, yes, I hear you. Write it down. We'll sit down together after dinner and we'll hear.
could that yes be then misconstrued
Well, as a
as
parent,
permission?
that's one of the things parents get to know, that my yes isn't my permission. My yes means I heard you. There is some concern there, but it's easy to dispel. When you hear me say yes, it doesn't mean I'm giving you permission. It means I'm listening to you tell me more.
And that's the key. So how could we teach our children that our yes is not permission, it's being heard?
Well, they may want to hear yes, and they aren't really listening to the rest of your message. And but you said yes, you agreed, says the child
Mhm.
or maybe teenager, and mother, yes, I was. My yes means I'm listening to you. My yes means I want to hear you tell me more. I need more information before I can say yes or no. So just from the get go, my yes isn't I agree. My yes is I'm listening. It's not that difficult. That's one of the easier things. Yes, it means I'm listening.
I want to go back to the younger child, though, the toddler,
Mm,
because they're not going to have the reasoning capability of it.
oh gosh, no.
Yes just means yes. Yes means permission.
Well, if it's a toddler level, less than 5 or 6 years old, you might want to grab them in for a hug first, which is probably what they want in the first place, right? And you have the terrible twos, where their first emotional language is no. It's their
Yeah.
all-purpose use. And as a parent, I would just grab, come over, let's sit to my lap. That's you want to relate to them. Um, there's an article, Mr. Rogers had a simple set of rules for talking to children. You can find that's the name of the article. And no one talks to children better than Mr. Rogers, and he's no longer with us. But the article, you know, how to talk to our children it would be gold. It's in the binder I give the articles, and you get to respond to the child where they're at. There was a father with a 5-year-old and the 5-year-old boy did something, and the father goes, "Why did you do that?" Well, the problem is a 5-year-old doesn't have even the language to answer the question, right? 5-year-olds have a 6,000 word vocabulary maximum. And so you're asking for an explanation, Number one, they're not abstract thinkers. They haven't the language or the psychology or the emotional development to even answer your question. Don't do that. You might, it's just, it's a dead end. You'll leave them feeling bad about themselves. They know they're angry with you. They know you're angry with them, but you have no capacity to respond at age 5 and 6 and 8 and 10. Why did you do that? Don't. You'll just say, here, come, sit in my lap. Let's, you know, there's many directions I could go at this moment. If you want to keep going, I can. I have lots of things to say.
Well, I do want to go back into your earlier years, back when you were doing more counseling, and you were saying how you were working with people who were involved with domestic violence and abuse.
Oh, yeah.
And then you decided, and you asked that question, how can I make a difference?
How can I treat it? Wouldn't it be better to prevent it rather than treat it after the damage is done?
Exactly.
And my inquiry over these years have been, yes, and seems are the best tools I got so far.
As the way to prevent. So how could we apply that to those people who are susceptible to being domestic violence abusers?
Perpetrators or victims are we talking about, or both? Mm-hmm. Well, we learn how to communicate from our parents, and then we may learn to communicate from watching TV. We watch these things, these media programs and influencers. Oh, that's really awful. We are influenced by a tsunami of information, not very good quality. We're trying to figure out, as teenagers, for instance, how do I have a relationship? How do I love each other? And the quality of information is very low, very, very low. And in one instance, this one male grew up where he was physically abused at age 12, and he watched his sister being abused when she was 10. And before he graduated, he watched 2 murders. This will put a dent in your fender. Yeah. That was his model. Or his parents divorced when they're 10 or 5. And those lessons of life that we get as children. In one case, she learned to anticipate being abandoned. It's tough. She was 51 years old now. It's hard to make a relationship you expect to be abandoned. So you have 1 foot out of the door and your backpack and your bag packed. So one of the things we do, we go back and see what's running beneath the surface of your life. Things that you learned as young as 2 years old. By the time I tell you that story, what are the things that are running you and distorting your adult relationship that are leftovers from your life as a child or in your previous marriage? That's why another reason I wrote the book. Marriage and Communication: Recipes for Life. You can actually, if you're a highly motivated learner, you can actually go. A lot of the stuff I said today are in the first 8 recipes. There's 16 of them. There's just amazing, easily accessible world out there once you know how.
I also wanted to go into the brisket story
because
I've used that story with my clients as well. Mm-hmm. And it's one of my favorite of, you're doing it because you're not actually present.
You're following the rules.
You're just following some rules blindly, and you're not actually thinking for yourself.
Well, the mother in this case was not inquisitive. She wasn't reflective. No. She was a censor. She just wants to know. Just tell me what to do. I'm interested in making brisket. Let's not talk about it. I know it works. My mother taught me. I know how to do it. But the daughter was an intuitive. She wanted, but why do you do it that way? It's a good illustration of that particular personality type. It's also funny.
Oh, I love it. And then you went into the story about one of my favorite TV shows and characters, the lovely Sheldon Cooper.
It's hilarious because he's a thinker, but Leonard is a feeler.
Yes.
Leonard's mother, the psychiatrist, wrote books about potty training poor Leonard.
Yes.
And once you can, if you can watch Big Bang Theory and now the spin-off through the lens of personality types, it all makes sense. It's still funny, but you understand that, Penny is a feeler. Leonard
Yeah.
is a feeler. And Leonard only pays attention to his feelings when you give him a piece of Mr. Spock's DNA. Very funny
Yeah.
episode.
Oh, I love that one. You're going to get something that doesn't happen. A hug.
Mhm.
Sheldon's love language, the ultimate piece of his love language was to touch another human being.
Mm.
It was the ultimate rarity for him.
Yeah. Um,
And it was the greatest privilege that he could give to you was
mhm.
his touch.
Oh, it's hilarious when you have this particular lens filter, which you can see the people in the show. It's hilarious still, and you understand that's like his brother, or his sister,
Oh yeah.
mother, or his father. It's just like it all fits. It's all still funny. It gives us access to a new future for everybody. Um,
And it's very interesting seeing these different personality types being
mhm.
reflected in what we watch. And then that's influencing, as you used earlier, it's influencing everybody else's perspective of relationships.
I'm not sure Pinterest is a good teacher, and I'm sure
Or,
that
or
saying yes to the dress not a good teacher,
yeah, or TikTok, or
right?
yeah. And as you said, there's a lot of information out there that's of very low quality. Now, you did mention the 16 personalities website for the
Yes.
Myers-Briggs test.
Mhm.
And if somebody does that test,
Yes.
how do you want them, or what would you recommend they do to understand it better?
Well, read each other's reports aloud together, taking turns. Because this is a we educational process. That's why you'd read The Five Love Languages by Gary Chapman, first chapters to
Mhm.
start with, to get located in people who feel loved in different ways. And you understand, well, that's how my love language is. Oh, I've been misloving you because I'm applying my love language to you. And it's a misloving. It's out of sync. So when you read it aloud together, taking turns, that's the important part. If you read it by yourself, you know more, but you don't get to be more. So if you read it aloud together, taking turns, you're a lot of aha moments. A lot of aha moments when you realize that, you know, not that they're ignoring your feelings, they don't pay much attention to their own either.
And you were saying about how the gentleman that was working 100 hours
Ugh,
and his wife, here she is alone, not
alone.
getting her, not getting her needs met.
Mm-hmm.
And then you introduce them to spirituality.
Yes, and myself, by the way, it was a double lesson because I've been living a thinker's life until that point, and then I got when they started going to church, things started to move, and that was one of the departure points where I went to become a chaplain. You know, and
And
she I don't want all that money, she says to him. But he was probably acts of service. He was being furiously acts of service, thinking that he's loving his family while missing the boat.
yeah, now I see again, because I also see things on TikTok. I see people, or in particular women, wanting today
Hmm?
money. If the man has money, I'll have him. If he doesn't have money, he's rejected. And
Well,
I see this
The Beatles
reflecting
have
a
it
lot
right.
in society.
You remember the Beatles? Money can't buy you love. Remember the Beatles song?
Oh, I remember that song. Can buy me love.
When you only know that money buys stuff, you can try to buy yourself love. But how about learning how to love and be loved, and maybe escape the trauma of your own parents? It's a default. Someone who is now the American president, I won't say anymore, $1 billion won't make you $1 billion happy. It won't.
No.
So, but teenagers, don't forget that they have a very weak relationship between cause and effect. Think about that. People say, oh, teenagers, they think they're immortal. No, they just can't imagine dying. It's a distinction.
No.
They don't have that as abstract thinking available for at least another 5 to 10 years more. So they know money is concrete, right? They know you can buy an Escalade, you can buy expensive cars, you can buy bling, and they're connected in their immature minds with money is the answer. What if we spent time teaching them how to communicate and have high quality relationships by the time they're 15 or earlier?
And
Or earlier.
so,
I'm not that kind of educator, but I'm pretty sure this can begin even in elementary school.
yeah. So, what would you say to the person who would respond to that with, I would much rather cry in a Mercedes Benz than
Hmm.
in a bus?
Well, my answer would be yes, I hear you. Remember that part? And I wonder if there's another approach you might take that left you not crying wherever you are. A quick sidebar. The model is marriage is a bubble. Think about bubble.
Hmm.
And when you have an image of bubble, you can then know where your boundaries lie. Think about that. Inside the bubble, we agree. Outside the bubble, we communicate. Your mother-in-law comes with, I have this great idea for you and your spouse. But now with yes, ands, and seems, starting to put this all together, we say, yes, I hear you. Thank you for letting me know. I'll bring it up to my spouse. But for now, let's change the subject. We don't let anything inside our bubble that we don't agree on or communicate with. Does what I'm about to do or say belong in our bubble or not? If not, don't. If yes, with our agreement, we do. And if not sure, we communicate to validate whether it is acceptable or not. Our children are in this bubble, ourselves as individuals, our me is in that bubble. And we have all these communication protocols, yes, ands, and seems, and got tos and get tos, and tend to. The world
The,
is uncertain, but
the
we are in
interesting thing
charge.
about, sorry, the interesting
We're in
thing about
charge
your
of
bubble,
our bubble. It's our bubble. We get to say.
yeah, the
Yes,
interesting
Jason.
thing about your bubble is that even on the Big Bang Theory,
Mm-hmm.
Sheldon was telling people that they only had coitus once a year, and the people in the cafeteria knew, and they were having a date. Him and Amy were on a date, and Bert was in the restaurant, and he'd been stood up, so they invited him to sit down, and Bert was going, "Oh, I'd really love to have a relationship like you. I mean, you've got the perfect relationship, except you only have sex once a year."
Mm-hmm.
And Amy was horrified by that. And they then went into this discussion later on because she was hurt and upset, etc. And he brought this whiteboard with these areas of communication.
Mm-hmm.
And in the center was him and Amy and another dot. And she said, "What's that dot?" And he said, "That's the things that I keep to myself. The secrets that only I say to me, the things that I think and that I don't share." And he goes, "I think we might need to add somebody else." And she goes, "Who?" And he goes, "Oh, doctor, whatever the doctor's name was, in case something gets rash, we get a rash or a bit of redness."
This, this is how a thinker operates. There's,
Yeah,
there's a percentage. There's the four letters for percentages, and his is way at the top of the scale for thinking.
yeah.
And we get to be responsible for, then you go, yes, and let's look at this together. Yes, and let's find a way that leaves us with more return on life. Yes,
And and what that episode ended up doing was making him and Amy's relationship stronger because she understood his communication, he
and
understood hers, and between the two of them, they were hearing each other. And as you said earlier, respond rather than react.
responding is intelligent, reacting is not.
Big time.
Mhm.
Now, I did want to carry on. I hope we've still got a little bit more time with you
Yes, I'm
because
fine.
I do want to continue.
Please.
You were talking about the cheaters and infidelity is a symptom, not a cause, because
Yes.
of some things that were happening around our age 5, and we would get indications around that time that no one cares what I want, or they're not good enough, um, or some other programs that we might have.
I call them distortions, coping strategies that maybe made sense to a 5-year-old, but not doesn't make sense to our adults. I mean, there's one couple when they got to understand that there were two 12-year-olds duking it out,
Mhm.
and their adult life was in tatters. That's why they came to me. And they realized they had to, you know, set aside their younger selves to give us the freedom that adult enjoys. Um, the story I use is that, in the United States, maybe in where you grow up, they used to have party lines for telephones. The whole neighborhood shared one single phone line. And when you wanted to make a phone call, you lift it up and see was someone using it. Which ensued a lot of mischief, like, hey, Mabel, hang up! I hear, can believe it, But if you looked at yourself as having an inner party line, your identity at age 5, your identity at age 12, 16, and they're all listening in. That's the model, anyways. And sometimes they hijack your mouth. You start speaking as if you're 16, not a 30-year-old. So with the model of the party line, you can say, thank you for listening. I'll get back to you later. And Thomas Jefferson, famous for the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. So not only do I have my inner line, so do you. You may speak at a time of life that doesn't belong to your stage of life. So freedom. Let's be aware that your inner selves, which is just another model, they have an influence on your speaking today. Get off the phone.
Exactly. Now, I also wanted to talk about the fix it mindset
Oh.
and also with the trigger of truth causing arguments that
Mhm.
seems indicates interpretation. Can you expand on that for me?
Well, speaking ordinarily, our listener has an automatic mechanism for, do I agree or disagree? Is it right? Is it wrong? And it's a mechanism. We want to understand that what I say to you, JC, is communicated. And so automatic, good, bad, right, wrong, agree or disagree, to see whether what you say to me makes any sense. And if it doesn't, at that point we stop listening, stop communicating, and start, arguing whose truth is truer here, who's right and who's wrong, whose reality is the most realistic, to establish a connection, basically, that we agree on the reality so we can continue to communicate. Um, but so that's why we want to employ the word seems. Sidebar: the world has no language. Trees don't fall, birds don't sing, and waves don't crash. Those are all words that human beings invent to encompass our experience of being alive. We invent language, linguistic abstractions, to be technically, which is extraordinarily valuable because of, given that anything we're talking about, including this, is a conversation of interpretations. The good news is that once I understand that anything we're saying is an interpretation, we now have the opportunity to choose a new opportunity, a new interpretation that provides us access to life. You might say, oh, they're critical and judgmental. Or you could say they're careful and deliberate. Same antecedent event. So you get to choose. After 20 years, I know you to be stubborn. Then you can rewrite that interpretation that gives us increased life. So we have freedom. Once we understand that all of life, our experience of life is what house of being do we live in? Sorry or apologize? They're all
Mhm.
a structure of interpretations. Some of which are lessons we learned as children. The 2-year-old, he was the first grandson of the whole family. And for the first 2 years of his life, oh, it's a boy. It's a boy. How cute he is. Look at that head of hair. Oh, adore you, adore you, adore you. That was his reality for the first 2 years of his life. And then his brother was born. And the quality of the attention he got shifted. In this
Mhm.
case, he didn't blame his brother. but he started to act out. He learned to grab attention any way he could. And for the next 40 years, he acted out. Good attention, it doesn't really distinguish good attention or bad attention. He would blurt things out in the middle of a sentence, grab people's attention, because that was his challenge then when he's 18 months old. 18 months old. So once he's 44 years old, now he no longer acts out because he realized it sourced when he was 2-year-old and his brother was born. So it's an amazing opera. And
it certainly is.
When we realize we are the writers, journey. We are the writers, the directors, we hold the camera and we show the lights.
And you're certainly showing the light on who people are today, and the topic of communication and relationship. I'm not going to look at it the same after hearing you today. I mean, the house of being. I love that.
It's pretty obvious when you look for which house of being. Does life happen to you or do you happen to life?
Yes.
I'm accountable.
I look at my own life and people have said to me, you can't do that. So I go and do it.
Now you say, yes, I hear you. And how about we sit down and discuss this?
Yeah. But I look back at my life and go, people have always said no to me. So I do what I want.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what they say.
With a yes and you could have bypassed much of that.
Yeah.
No, and
I wasn't taught that.
I pretty much invented this wheel. I don't think I've invented everything, but having a book, a manual for marriage probably is something I might claim somewhere. Just teach them how.
I love the fact that you've also given us a reminder, and I want to finish up with this.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about trying to do your best. It's about intending.
Yes.
And that you have choice.
You know, just and any organization, any conference, any time to be a keynote speaker, any local civic club, I'll zoom in, and in half an hour, you'll have yes and, seems, get to, and got to, and maybe a little time for personalities. I'm committed to this world because our world has a high degree of unworkability, and sometimes these behaviors go over generations. Repeating our own family, the whole family speaks to each other in sarcasm. It's like, sure, you really mean that, don't you? And the whole family, from child to adult, they're just sarcastic as the day is long. It's like, what? I have lots of stories, and it's such a joy because they come to me because they have to. They come back because they get to.
Well, today it's been an absolute honor having you here today. It's been an absolute blessing. I just want to thank you so much for being here, Paul. How can people get hold of you? What is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Well, marriageandcommunication.com. And there you'll find the landing page for my book, An Opportunity to Buy It if you want to. Marriageandcommunication.com. That's terrific SEO. And
because what will happen with with this episode is your photo will be on our Speakers on Edge website, and there'll be a button that goes straight to your website.
Perfect.
So if people can't remember marriageandcommunication.com, they can find it through Speakers on Edge, through our website.
As a matter of fact, and I'd be happy to speak, put me in front of 10,000 people and give me half an hour and they'll feel the difference.
Well, with the changes that we've made to the show, we're about to go live on the Google Play Store, and will be available on every Android phone in the world, an Android device in the world, which is about 4.5 billion devices.
This may be our moment. This literally today may be our moment to steer a direction. A world that's given by return on life rather than return on income. ROL. I trademarked it even. ROL, return on life. Yes, Anne, what's your return on life in this particular behavior? What does it cost you? It's a great opening conversation. I'd be honored to be in front of any group, anytime, anywhere. In 30 minutes, you'll feel the difference.
And I would definitely recommend, if anyone watching, to reach out to Paul today.
Yeah, it's easy. It's not complex. It's not rocket science. It's 3-letter words. ANDYES. 5-letter words. SEMMES. Seems. Yes. Ands. Very uncomplicated. It's easy to learn. And I'd be happy to be your guide anywhere.
Well, thank you again, Paul. It has been an absolute honor having you here on the show today.
Yes, and thank you for inviting me. I am honored and inspired.